Hi, and welcome to our session. We are going to be talking to you today about lead from where you are and what that means to us. My name is Jaci Lindburg. I'm at the University of Nebraska. I'm an Assistant Vice President for IT Strategy and Learning Technologies.
Hi, my name is Tron Compton-Engle. I'm the Director of Client Applications at Case Western Reserve University.
Hello, I'm Michele Kelmer at Indiana University, and I work in learning technologies.
And I'm Sean McDonald with Moore Associates. We are a leadership coaching, consulting, and development firm. And I've had the pleasure to get to work with all three of our panelists and will now facilitate the conversation about lead from where you are. I want to start, Jaci, if you wouldn't mind, in level setting us on what exactly is lead from where you are. What does it mean? Could you define it for us?
Yeah, I define this in a lot of different ways. For me, leading from where you are means that you leave things like title at the door and you really think about it as contribution to making something better. I define it as seeing an opportunity and going for it, and having really great self-awareness and organizational awareness to realize where those opportunities are. What I think it's important to point out is it doesn't mean to me that you just run through some of the organizational structures that are there. I think you value those. I think you see those while recognizing your own skills and what you can bring that uniquely positions you to both see an opportunity and a challenge and also be the one to recommend a solution. One of the things I think about with this a lot in higher ed is frequently we'll hear, well, they are working on that. And I think lead from where you are is a good opportunity to say, who is they and what are they working on, and really explore an opportunity, like I said, to contribute and see that value.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. The image of swimming with the current came to mind as well versus trying to swim against it. So great. Thanks. Michele and Tron, would you add anything to that as we think about our definition of lead from where you are?
Often we hear that, and there's a book by a similar title, that you don't have to have a title to be a leader. And I think that's important in this. We all have opportunity, no matter where we are in the organizational structure. And if we follow what Jaci says about looking for the opportunities in the right times, we will get a lot of exposure and a lot of opportunity.
Awesome. Thanks, Michele.
Yeah,
Hey, Tron, how about giving us an example? Like what does lead from where you are look like in action?
Yeah, maybe I can talk a little bit about my leadership journey and how some of the concepts that Jaci talked about applied. When I started at Case Western Reserve University many years ago, I was in a school IT department that was, very siloed. I was a help desk manager, and then I was an IT director, working very much on my own in a small department. About 4 years ago, the directive came for us to centralize IT at Case Western, and that was a sea change, and I had to adapt to that. So some of the things that happened right away is I volunteered for our school to go first to be centralized. Just embrace it, right? This is an opportunity. The MORE program came up quickly after that, a leadership program, and I said, yes, I would want to participate in that. So that was another opportunity that I took. Partly I think the lesson there is when opportunities come your way, take them. Sometimes you don't have to seek them. They're just presented to you, and it can be easy to say I'm too busy, but be very reluctant to do that. Usually you can fit it in, and you usually won't regret taking a leadership opportunity. During that time, during that transition time, I started taking leadership roles, or at least getting involved in projects that interested me personally. Maybe they weren't in my job description, but I was interested in them. Video conferencing, led a couple of projects related to video conferencing, G Suite, Box. There is another lesson where sometimes you just follow your passions, and do the work that you want to do, and then that can lead into other opportunities. And then finally, after things, the dust settled a little bit with the change to centralization, it became clear that our organization had some holes to fill. There were some areas that really weren't covered well. And so I created a proposal to create a new area called client applications that would fill some of those holes, such as having people manage services like Box and G Suite and Zoom. And, that led to my current position. So, see your organization's holes and being willing to step up and fill those holes, I think is a great opportunity to advance.
Tron, that's awesome. Thank you. And I know none of you would brag about this, so I'm going to brag on your behalf. But it should be mentioned that three of your panelists here were award winners, recognized by their peers for leading from where they are when we did an award by that name a couple years ago. So Tron speaks from experience when he talks about lead from where you are. And again, I know you wouldn't mention that yourself, but I wanted to call it out because it really is important that people saw you step out of your job description. You saw voids and you stepped into them to help the organization go where it needed to go. So thanks for sharing that. Michele, Jaci, anything to add to that on what does lead from where you are look like? He hit it. He hit it. Perfect. Thank you. How about we shift to, how does someone's watching right now and they're like, okay, I get it. That's a great concept, but how do I get started, right? So Michele, can you help us think about how one would begin to even think about leading from where they are?
Certainly, and I don't think it's just like a switch you turn on, right? It's you lay the groundwork through what you do every day by building relationships across your organization in larger groups, whether you're part of a consortium or an alliance of some sort, outside of the university, but you definitely take time to build relationships. And some of you may be thinking that's a bit of a challenge right now because I'm working remotely or I work at a distance. And I challenge you that you can get past that. Make some time. Find some ways to do a meeting where, it's a coffee talk and, or a lunch like you would do if you were in a face-to-face setting and you would, bump into someone and say, hey, let's have coffee. I mean, you're going to have to put a little more effort into it at first, but put some recurring meetings on your calendar with people that you really want to build relationships with. And then find ways to get involved, whether it's through things like what Tron was saying, where there are opportunities that seem to be bubbling up inside your organization that would be related to your work, but also projects or volunteer activities that are at your organization, but could provide you more exposure as a leader. And so in our situation at IU, we had an IT leadership community get started in 2014, and I was involved with that, even though I was not a manager at the time. I wasn't supervising anyone else. I got involved at the ground level there to make sure that I could do things I was passionate about. And through that, other opportunities came up, and I met lots of people across the organization and got involved in some really cool projects from that. So you never know where it's going to happen. So find the things that you like to do and get involved. And then the final thing I wanted to say on that was that when you make a commitment, you have to follow through with it. And it's hard for people to see what you're doing now if you're working remotely. And this is where, we have opportunities to build trust. We say we're going to do something, we demonstrate that we've done it well, and we will continue to get more opportunities that way. So definitely think about the ways in which you're building trust through your actions.
Awesome. Michele, thank you. Tron and Jaci, anything you would add about, as people try to think about getting started, is there anything front of mind?
Yeah, I do have something I might add. I mean, I really agree with Michele in terms of it being about connection. I think that's huge, and sharing ideas, and being able to do that in a context where you have that space to do that and connect with others, whether it's virtual or not. But it also makes me think of the concept of sponsorship, which I think is really important here too, because if you're going to lead from where you are, you might hit barriers really early on, just when somebody says, this isn't yours, or someone else might be doing that, or wouldn't we expect it to come out of this other office? And so I would also just encourage the concept of sponsorship to be introduced here too, because I think it does empower people to lead from where they are if they also really recognize the people that can sponsor up and coming leaders and really get them in the door to bring up those ideas in the context and in the avenues where they can actually get some momentum behind them as well.
You bring up a fascinating point, sponsorship. Some of us have sponsors that support us, and others of us don't. And it's also an access issue. Some of us don't have the same relationships as other people. And so on the idea of getting started, if you don't have that sponsorship and you don't feel like you have access to certain relationships, how would you get started on that?
Well, one of the things we talked about when we went through the More Leaders program, which hopefully there's some alumni out there who agree with us on this, but we talk about the 4 I's, and the I's stand for initiate, inquire, invest, and then influence. And so if we spend some time, especially now, in initiating conversations with people who are in roles that we find interesting, that are involved in projects that we want to know more about. So we initiate a conversation with them, ask for just a few minutes of their time, and then inquire about the work they're doing and be genuinely interested in listening to what's going on in other parts of the organization or in places where we'd like to get involved. And then, when you find things that are related to that, you invest more time, send them an email, check in, and really build that relationship. And so I think that is how you can build sponsors for yourself outside of the work you're normally doing. And then you should also look to give back. And if there are ways in which you can help others break down barriers to the work they want to do, help them there.
Thanks, Michele. Tron, would you add anything to that? I know you were about to jump in as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think, one thing I have found, at least at Case Western, a huge gap or need is just facilitating communication across teams. And so if you're willing to fill that role, you can add incredible value to an organization and also get, people get to know you and trust you and appreciate you. So that's one thing that I think I found really helpful was that I've been sort of that facilitator role in my organization. And I think that really helped me to get to know people, build relationships with others and other teams, and was at least very helpful for me.
Jaci, let me ask you, I'm going to build on that, right? That not only is access to relationships or having them in general a piece, but also the culture you operate in. And, what if it's, we talked earlier about swimming with the current. What if staying in your lane is part of the norm here, right? So as Tron pointed out, sometimes you've got to step out of your job description, right? Step into a void that you see. What if that's counterculture in our organizations? What's your guidance there?
Yeah, and I think many times it is. I mean, I really do. I think sometimes it's easier to just let it ride and not go against the current. And frankly, when you go against the current every day, it's exhausting. And so there's a risk both personally, I think, and professionally of doing that. But to me, I think I believe this is a Warren Bennis quote, a first-class noticer. To me, that is what this is all about. And whether it's that you're noticing strategies that might be effective in your organization, or you're noticing people who might be going about things in a way that you think you might be able to mimic, that just really resonates with me, because I think regardless, you're always going to notice someone or something that you can take a tip from. And maybe that's the person you should be having coffee with, even if they have nothing to do with your project.
I like that. Thank you. I want to shift us a little bit. The conversation we've had so far has been terrific, and More Associates has been around since 1983, and this concept of lead from where you are has resonated since. But I think today, where we are in the past 7 months or so, it has sort of taken on new meaning in many ways. And so as we think about our current context, could you each comment on what is the importance of, and how is it different now to lead from where you are? Michele, you want to go first, and Jaci, and then Tron?
Sure. So one of the things I've noticed in this is in times like these, right, we're in uncertain times, people want to help, right? So people on my team, people I work with, everybody's looking for a way to do something that's going to have an impact and to bring meaning to their work. And so I think that we have to then help channel that into the projects and the ways in which we can work together instead of everyone independently trying to do something meaningful. This is a chance to become a leader and bring people together to move forward on projects and to do things that are going to help, whether it's students who are coming back to school, on campus or online, whether it's faculty learning new ways to teach in a hybrid environment, and all the number of things that are going on across IT. There's a lot of people who want to help, and there are a lot of opportunities to build relationships, to do things that are going to be meaningful and valued. And so I think, again, working on those relationships and finding people who have common interests to you, and moving forward on those projects as best we can.
Awesome. Thanks, Michele. Jaci?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Michele said. I mean, yes, so much has changed. And I think, it reminds me that I think we just need to maybe recognize that a lot of the same strategies that were effective for us before might need to be revisited. And it's that is hard, I think, just to even kind of coach yourself to do, right? To say, oh, this doesn't feel the same. Oh, this isn't working the same. But then to get up the next morning and say, I might try that a little bit different. And I think one of the things for me is, we frequently think about tasks in our work and relationships in our work. I don't think that balance really works the same virtually. At least it doesn't for me. I feel like it's much more like the tasks are just absolutely critical. They seem much more it's much more transparent, I think, when the tasks haven't been done. And so I think about too, just very genuine, transparent communication and how that is so critical in the environment we're in right now. And looking to potentially, like I said, new avenues in which to do that and do that effectively, whether that's a daily stand up with your team that you maybe didn't need to do before, or whether that's a end of day Friday recap that maybe you did in the hallway before. So I think it's just it's recognizing what works for you, but it's also recognizing where you might have to apply your strengths in new ways.
Awesome. Thank you. Tron?
I certainly agree with what Jaci and Michele said. I think one thing that's interesting for me with this that I have found is I have to be a lot more intentional about fostering leadership with my staff, right? Giving those people, people that I work with, the opportunities that they might not naturally get in a remote situation. It's a lot harder, I think, to have those opportunities, build those opportunities for your own staff when everyone is working separately. And so I've had to be more intentional about making sure that I'm thinking about what my staff is working on and what opportunities they have so that they can also, lead from where they are and build their career. So I found that to be a particular challenge and something I've had to be more intentional about.
Great. I want to give you all a closing comment, an opportunity to make one closing comment, whether it's a quote or some guidance for the audience. But as I do, I'll build off of what Michele added earlier about how to get started and give us a framework that we can think about as we think about trying to lead from where you are. And it's got three parts. It's mindset, tool set, skill set. And on the mindset side, even though you said, Michele, it's not a switch that we flip, there really is a moment of choice somewhere that each of you, just said, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to step into that void. I'm going to step over this line. I'm going to swim a little bit against the current, or at least a little faster with the current, or I'm going to, be an expert noticer. And so there is this moment of choice, or maybe there's smaller moments that build up, right? But there's a mindset piece that's really a big deal here that people want to reflect on. What would it mean for me to lead from where I am, regardless of my title and my role, but, to making the impact from the seat that I'm in. So number one. Number two is tool set. What is it that I can leverage from my facilitation tool bag or my relationship building tool bag that you mentioned, the 4 eyes of initiating and inquiring. Maybe, as you pointed out, Jaci, I've seen other people do some things. I'm watching. I'm the expert noticer. And I love that line. Thank you. And what can I leverage from others that what I've seen, right? So there's a tool set that I want to leverage. And then, of course, the last piece is skill set. And for me, that has everything to do with the application and stepping it forward. And you do it once, you learn, maybe it goes well, maybe it doesn't, but you learn from it and you keep going. So this mindset, tool set, skill set is sort of the combination of a framework that you can kind of leverage as you try to lead from where you are. Let's give us a closing, three closing comments, and then we can wrap up and say goodbye. How about we go Tron, Michele, Jaci?
I guess the only thing I would add is that certainly this is a challenging time, and a particularly challenging time for leadership, but it also is a time of greater opportunity. Certainly there are more gaps to fill now. Making those connections is more important than ever. So even though it's more difficult, it's a great opportunity.
And I'd add that lead from where you are, it's a call to action. It's not just sitting still. It's there are projects, good ideas, opportunities. Don't be afraid to take the first step into that. if you think about it as everyone is a leader, that's very empowering. And you just have to find the place in which you are destined to lead.
Jackie, you want to close us out and end the presentation for us?
Absolutely. You know, to me, leading from where you are is exactly what you said, Sean. It's that mindset, and it's directly linked to confidence to me. It's having the confidence to speak up more and trust the value of your voice and the value of your contribution. And, you know, I would be remiss if I didn't quote my dear, dear friend, Rick Fredericks, who's been with Moore & Associates for years. He told me early on that IT, in higher ed IT especially, is not a spectator sport. And he's absolutely right. And to me, that's the essence of leading from where you are, is recognizing you're not a spectator in a meeting. You're not a spectator in the environments in which we work. You're an active contributor. And I think once you shift your mindset to that, everything changes. And that's where, you know, you begin to then develop those other layers, your tool set and your skill set to match up with that. But that to me is where it all changes. So I'm really, really grateful that I was able to spend time with Sean and Tron and Michele today, and really appreciate you coming to hear a little bit more about our topic of lead from where you are, and hope you enjoy the rest of this year's EDUCAUSE sessions.